Welcome everyone. As I head towards Downing Street, I know a lot of you want to know what I plan and you want to influence it. So here in Manchester, at the site where I propose number 10 of the North, dozens of campaign groups and union bodies made up of people who've lived under my mayoralty have gathered to tell me what you want from me and what you're campaigning for. So first of all, I'd like to invite up Greater Manchester Friends of Palestine.
Thank you, Andy. On behalf of Greater Manchester Friends of Palestine, Youth Front for Palestine and many other supportive organisations, Greater Manchester CND, Oldham Peace and Justice, Jewish Action for Palestine and hundreds and literally thousands of others of us, all of you here, who've marched and taken part in vigils over the whole of the last 3 years. And we have a simple message, led by our Palestinian brothers and sisters, every action. The message to you, Andy, is simple. Stop arming Israel. Stop arming Israel! Stop arming Israel! Stop arming Israel! And we think it's quite possible that our movement has played a significant part in the downfall of your predecessor. And we have not gone away, and we are not going away. So Andy, it is not good enough when you say, I'm too far away to tell whether this is a disproportionate genocide. So would a proportionate genocide be okay? And then to say, I'm going to leave the definition of genocide up to the courts. You don't have to look further than the evidence of your own eyes. The father carrying his 10-month-old son dead through the streets of Gaza after the refugee tent was bombed. The mother standing at the Rafah crossing with a baby who died in her arms because the soldiers of Israel wouldn't let her across. You don't have to go through the facts and figures. It's sheer bloody murder, whether or not you call it a genocide. But actually, Andy, the judges and the courts have said it's genocide. The highest court in the world, the International Court of Justice, said 2 years ago this is plausible genocide. And luckily for you, they gave you 3 things you could do. All states are committed to stopping the arms with Israel, to supporting the humanitarian assistance for the victims of that genocide, and to cutting all those ties with Israel. Drop the sanctions, free Palestine!
Thank you very much. Next, I want to hear from Greater Manchester Unite Community Branch. What do you want from me?
Hello everybody, I'm the Secretary of Greater Manchester Community Branch, and we also have members in our branch who are members of the Tenants' Union. And our demand to Andy Burnham is to keep his promise to deliver the biggest council house building programme since the post-war period. We've campaigned on street homelessness and in support of migrants evicted from hostels, and we demand good quality, affordable housing and social rent for the 1.5 million people currently on waiting lists. We agree with Andy Burnham. Everything starts with a good home and with the Housing First model, based on immediate permanent housing for homeless people and to end the current temporary accommodation system. The Labour government plans are just totally inadequate. They've pledged £39 billion to repair existing public housing stock, build 300,000 new houses over 10 years, 30,000 a year, it doesn't even touch the sides. And they promise a state-owned housing developer who could borrow at lower rates. We agree with all of this, but we don't think it can be achieved with the current budget and the current plan. A much more radical step is needed. All the £39 billion should be directed to build homes for rent built by councils and housing associations, rather than subsidising the private sector building of affordable homes for purchase. And we want to completely reverse the notorious right to buy introduced by Thatcher, which is at the seat of all our problems.
Thank you very much. Next, I want to hear from fossil-free Greater Manchester.
Thanks, Andy. So, fossil-free Greater Manchester, our ask of you is to urgently bring in legislation requiring UK pension funds to divest from fossil fuels. I travelled here today from Saddleworth, where our moor is on fire. As you're probably all aware, the intensity and frequency of fires like that is increased by climate chaos. Burning fossil fuels is pushing the planet into that chaos. Pension funds are major investors in fossil fuels, meaning that workers are funding the destruction of the habitable planet that they hope to enjoy their retirement on. So Andy, we've spoken to you a number of times and you said you agreed with us with our aim of getting the Greater Manchester Pension Fund to divest, but you did not have the power to influence that fund. You will have the power now, and you'll have a more national power. Perhaps the opportunity lies in the Energy Independence Bill to compel pension funds to divest from fossil fuels. They could even redirect to climate-positive investments. So again, our ask is we asked you to urgently bring in legislation requiring UK pension funds to divest from fossil fuels.
Next, we're going to hear from Manchester Trade Union Council.
Hello Andy, I'm Frank Ellis and I'm speaking on behalf of Manchester Trade Union Council, a group that represents local grassroots trade unionists. Workers' rights have advanced since Labour took office 2 years ago, though we are disappointed that Labour's Green Paper was watered down when the Employment Rights Act was eventually enacted. But we are concerned that employer organisations are trying to undo the work achieved already by claiming that they add to business costs and cause a loss of jobs. And you must deliver the full Employment Rights Act. Sweatshop Britain will not work. David Davis, the Tory MP, likened our trade union laws to those of General Franco, the fascist dictator of Spain, who died 50 years ago. We are disappointed about some of the things Labour has not done. You promised day one rights, but the qualifying period for unfair dismissal has only been reduced from 2 years to 6 months. We would like to see the back of all laws that unfairly restrict our ability to campaign for workers' rights, such as laws restricting the rights to secondary action. We need to build the framework that will allow workers to achieve justice at work and higher pay. Otherwise, you will fail in your objective of raising the standards of living for all workers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, I want to hear from Greater Manchester Immigration Aid Unit. What would you like to see from me in Downing Street?
Thank you, Andy. I'm Rivka from Greater Manchester Immigration Aid Unit. We stand alongside people navigating the UK's hostile immigration and asylum systems. We provide legal advice, support, community information and campaigning, and we're calling for welcome, safety, justice, home and support for all, regardless of immigration status. People's rights are under relentless attack. Rights to seek safety in the UK, to access justice, to live free from fear and to live with dignity, and to stay here, to settle and become citizens. Lies about our communities are spread daily by the media and by politicians, including those in the ruling party, and that translates to violence on the streets and harassment outside people's homes. Destitution and insecurity are weaponised as tools of immigration control, and the rise of the far right is now used to justify further attacks. No one wins. People are spoken about and spoken over, and their voices are rarely heard. Our demand comes from our expectations for Greater Manchester politicians, a document that over 50 organisations working in Greater Manchester have put their names to. It's framed around the fact that we're all residents of this place, and it contains clear material demands that would make people's lives better immediately. It highlights the fact that local and national ambitions to tackle things like homelessness, child poverty, exploitation and violence against women and girls cannot succeed while the violence of immigration controls continue. So Andy, we ask you to listen to the people directly impacted by this harm and to work with the communities you already know here in Manchester and across the country to make our expectations a reality.
Thank you very much.
Greater Manchester campaign for nuclear disarmament like to see me do in Downing Street, I wonder.
I'd like to see you doing a lot, Andy. So in your speech at the People's History Museum, you spoke about Manchesterism, which you translated as economic.
This country comes from the far right and the racism that funds it. So we say to you, there is a war being waged, Andy, but it's a class war. It's a war being waged by the privileged, the ruling class and the billionaires against the working class people of this country. So we say to you, stop putting money into the pockets of the warmongers, the arms dealers, the arms manufacturers, and start putting money into the pockets of the working class, into the NHS, into the services we need. We say welfare not warfare, jobs not bombs.
Hello Andy, I'm speaking here, as you said, for Defend Our Juries, and our demand is lift the ban on Palestine action. You know, as well as I do, that dictatorships and Western governments that want to impose a war economy on their unwilling people always call their political opponents terrorists. It goes on all over the world. And we know that in calling us, the political opponents of that war economy, terrorists, they hide the support for the real terrorist states like Israel. And the governments who do that are willing to corrupt our legal systems to frighten the general population out of their support for the struggles of the oppressed, like the Palestinian people trying to fight their genocide. And most of all, they are willing to close down all their political opponents. As we see here, all of us are under threat of being called terrorists and being tried and imprisoned under dictatorial powers. Defend the right to protest. Lift the ban on Palestine Act.
From the Unites Greater Manchester Mental Health Branch, what do you want from me when I enter Downing Street?
Thank you. Your dream is coming true, and good for you. You opened your door to us in November 24. So you know we have the poorest community mental health teams in the country. And Manchester knows poorest because over half of our kids around here grow up in poverty, 52%. You know our 6 community teams have the highest death rates, the youngest patient mortality, the poorest performance on every measure that matters. So little contact between staff and our 7,000 patients that NHS leaders calculated we need 524 more staff, costing 39 million, just to give our severely unwell patients 1 visit a month. 524 staff for 1 visit a month. That's what we need. You know we have 1% of England's community patients, but we receive 0% of the 5 billion in transformation funding available during your mayorship. 1% of the population, 0% of the funding. You know that whilst patients and staff suffered, non-NHS and private companies creamed 932 million a year from Manchester's health budget. You know Manchester loudly said no to Palantir. Our patients' most confidential data should never become somebody else's business model, or a training ground for technologies that contribute towards death and discrimination. You knew all this then, and you know it now. You were full of beans when you opened the door in 24. Full of beans, but no peas, and hardly any power. But you have that now. Don't send us more beans or devolution or Manchesterism or community transformation or difficult choices, claptrap. Write the 39 million check. We'll make sure patients get a lot more than 1 visit a month, and we'll save you millions while we do it. Make staff to patient ratios in every NHS service the law. How many patients coming in and how many staff are needed to support those patients? Count the patients, count the staff, and fund the difference. Simple maths if you're honest and fair enough to do the calculation, but none of your predecessors were. We'll never forget you, Orchid. Please don't forget us.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Andy. My name is Miguel Saona.
I'm representing here Manchester Metropolitan University, UCU, and speaking in solidarity with all workers in higher education and with Unison at the GMB. Universities contribute billions to the local, regional, and national economy. We generate the knowledge we need to tackle the multiple and multiplying challenges we face as a society. We change people's lives and expand horizons. You had a brilliant education, Prime Minister Burnham, and that's what every young person deserves. Access to the arts and humanities should not be the preserve of the privately educated or the very rich. Everyone deserves the time and space to realize their talents. We all hoped and believed things will be better with a Labour government. Instead, it is getting worse and worse. Thousands and thousands of skilled, creative, experienced workers in higher education are seeing their livelihood destroyed. Whole subject areas are under attack. Migrant staff and the students are used as political footballs rather than recognized for their contribution to our workplaces and society. This goes to the hearts of what kind of country we are and what kind of leader you want to be. We are calling on you to invest in higher education, to value learning and all its benefits, to save universities, and to work with us on a new fairer funding model. This country needs a higher education sector that supports us in researching and teaching students in learning and growing, and towns and cities across our country in flourishing. Don't let this fall down to the bottom of your list, Andy Burnham. Don't let the United Kingdom become a country that destroys rather than creates knowledge and that crushes people's imagination, dreams, and... Thank you very much.
Iran. End UK participation in imperialist aggression across West Asia. The people of Iran have suffered again from weeks of bombardment and air raids by the US and its allies, including war crimes such as targeting food supplies, water facilities, and slaughtering ordinary conscripted soldiers as they slept in their beds. Even children with cancer are fair game to the US and its allies. In an authoritarian and reactionary move, the main part of Iran's defence structure and rendered any expression of support for their right to self-defence as a crime worthy of a decade of imprisonment. This is while UK military bases were heavily utilised by US bombers to commit their crimes against our people. The UK continues to impose economic sanctions on Iran, leading to thousands of deaths in our country. Britain's legacy is a legacy of tyranny, crime and violence. End your imperialist sanctions against Iran and end the hypocrisy of demonising other countries' institutions while you have done to do much worse than those nations.
Of the public services that have been outsourced to private companies back into the public domain. These are companies like Capita and Serco, who are raking in millions of pounds of profit at the taxpayers' expense, whilst at the same time providing an extremely poor service. For example, Capita have made such a mess of the civil service pension scheme that the government is actually forking out loads of money to sort out that mess. Because for these companies, public services are all about profit. And therefore they squeeze the pay of the workers that they employ. They squeeze the services that they supply. And the people who suffer are not just the people who work there, who often are prevented from joining a union, and I'd like you to do something about that as well, Andy, but it's the most vulnerable in our society. The children in the homes that are closed down, the elderly in the old people's homes that are left with inadequate staffing, the people in hospitals whose services are left to run out and be sold off. Well, this is what we're seeing. Public services should be run in a properly planned and funded way. They are not there for the get-rich-quick merchants to make a fast buck. There is no place for private business in our essential services. So don't let us down, Andy. Take back control, and while you're at it, not a penny in compensation for the multi-millionaire bosses of these companies. Tax the rich and make them pay for our public services.
Thank you very much. So next I'd like to hear from Patients Not Passports.
Patients Not Passports campaigns for an end to the imposition of charges for NHS, hospital and other secondary care for migrants who are present in the UK on visas and for persons without regularised immigration status, which can and has included children who were born in the UK. In December, Mayor Burnham wrote to us as follows: "I stand with you and others against policies which increase the risk of discrimination, deepen divisions in our communities, and make it more difficult for public services to support people who need it. I understand that cuts in legal aid have led to a chronic lack of capacity in immigration advice and legal aid provision, making it ever more difficult for people to regularise their status and even easier to become undocumented, increasing barriers to essential services. I'm also concerned about any policies that deter people from seeking health care or open up increased risks of racial and ethnic discrimination. It's crucial that we ensure that all essential health care is free at the point of use, regardless of immigration status, and that safeguards are introduced to ensure vulnerable communities can access the health care they need." Well, our ask to you, Mr Burnham, will you hold to those principles as Prime Minister? Will you appoint a Secretary of State for Health and Social Care who will make those commitments a reality and will end NHS charging for migrants? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I have to say, the last 16 years has been absolutely awful for health service. It's been awful for public services.
We've had 16 years of austerity, 16 years where more people are unnecessarily in distress, 16 years where more people are dying unnecessarily. You've impoverished our health service staff so they're at least 20% worse off than they were 20 years ago. And you've impoverished the users of our service, who you insist on calling, the Labour Party and the current government insist on calling scroungers, as if when you're ill you need to be driven off benefits. And I have to say, you promised that you're going to be different, and to be honest, to be different you're going to need money, and to need money, to fix it, we don't want you to take it from ordinary people, we don't want you to cut benefits, we don't want to see any more of the language that writes people off when they're scroungers and benefits, the sort of stuff that we started with Blair and got from the Tories and got from Labour and Starmer as well. We want that to end. We don't want scapegoating of refugees and migrants who built our health service and are helping to keep it every day that it goes today. But you see, we do want you to take money from bombs and guns that have destroyed and caused devastation across the world. We do want you to take the money from the super rich. Do you know it would take a nurse 10 million years of work to be as rich as Elon Musk. These people, it's not just Elon Musk, we have more millionaires and billionaires than we've ever had. We want them taxed to pay for our services. We want the businesses. Why is Tesco making record profits and the oil companies when they're ripping us off and charging us more? And we say we want you to prioritise ordinary people, tax the rich, welfare not warfare, and if you don't do it, we will fight to make you do it.
Now we are going to listen from Manchester's Friends of the Earth.
Hi, my name's Alma and I'm here from Manchester Friends of the Earth. The climate crisis is not a distant threat, it is happening now. As Mayor of Greater Manchester, you said yourself repeatedly, we need to accelerate action on climate. Here in Manchester, we're experiencing our second major heatwave of the year. And we're almost a week into moorland fires that are hard to control because of the timber dry vegetation. We've all experienced the smoke and the dangerously poor air quality from this, and it's a stark reminder of the action that we urgently need to take on climate change. Hundreds of heat-related deaths in the country this year are estimated to be caused by climate change. We're demanding that as new Prime Minister, you say no to climate-wrecking projects. Say no to the Rosebank and Jackdaw gas and oil fields. Say no to the third runway at Heathrow Airport and ban fracking for good. On Rosebank, you will be well aware that it would send UK climate emissions soaring. It would fail to improve our energy security and it won't reduce our bills. Climate justice is social justice. We're demanding that as new Prime Minister, you put people and planet above profit. Say no to climate-wrecking projects and commit to no new oil and gas. Instead, we ask that you back solutions that will make a real difference to our everyday lives. Prioritise homegrown renewables so that we're not reliant on costly oil and gas. Make better and cheaper public transport and have a revolution in home retrofitting to bring our bills down and create new jobs. Thank you.
Now we are going to listen from Fair Free Greater Manchester.
Thanks, Andy. I'm speaking on behalf of Fair Free Greater Manchester, and we're campaigning for fair free travel for everyone in Greater Manchester. This would help with the cost of living, the climate crisis, congestion, inequality and more. We support steps in that direction that will protect jobs and services, whether that's an expansion of fare free services, wider eligibility for fare free travel, or workers demanding travel passes from their employers. We want to see improved and expanded public transport services. You're widely praised for the introduction of the B network, ending nearly 40 years of deregulation of Greater Manchester buses, but much remains to be done. As Mayor, you learned firsthand the barriers facing local transport authorities who want to end bus deregulation. As Prime Minister, you will have the power to remove those barriers. When you started work on the B network, the law didn't allow public ownership of bus companies. We still have private companies siphoning off profits from our public transport. As Prime Minister, you will have the power to make it easy to establish publicly owned bus operators. As Mayor, you complained about how the funding pressures on local authorities hindered improvements to public transport. As Prime Minister, you will have the power to fix that. Andy, we want you to change the rules and fund local authorities to enable fair free public transport and publicly owned public transport.
Now we are going to listen to Trans Liberation Group.
Thanks, Andy. So hi, I'm just representing Trans Liberation Group. So as hostility towards trans people intensifies every day, and we as trans people are being ostracised from public life because of legislation, our demand to Andy Burnham is clear. Withdraw your support for the horrific new EHRC Code of Practice and instead provide desperately needed update to the Equality Act that is properly upheld and enforced to ensure not just trans people, but all people that are supposed to be protected under the Act, whether that's disabled people, migrants, queer people, are actually free from segregation and discrimination. For trans people, that also means ending a ban on puberty blockers for trans kids, so they don't have to go through gender trauma of going through the wrong puberty. It means we as trans people can play in a football team with our friends. It means we can go swimming without fear of being harassed. Also, for everyone, that means providing a properly functioning and well-funded civil justice system which truly empowers people to get justice quickly and stress-free. and doesn't mean endless anxiety-inducing wait times and real fear of dire financial consequences. It also means having a system that is fair and isn't used by those with the biggest pockets to use legal cases to attack trans people and water down our rights, as we saw in the Supreme Court ruling in the first place. Andy Burnham, the lives of a generation of trans and queer people falls in your hands. Don't go ahead and betray a community you claim to support.
Now we are going to listen to Public and Commercial Services Union, PCS, HMRC Salford Branch.
Thank you, Andy. So my name's Ed, I'm the branch organiser of the PCS HMRC Salford and Manchester branch, and we're standing here on some future government offices where many of our members are going to end up working. Firstly, I'd like to give my solidarity to the Unison AQA branch who are currently on strike over their pay, and who had the same demands of you, Andy, that we do. Pay restoration to before this nonsense that was austerity started. Your predecessor's administration claimed to have ended austerity, and that's news to our members and to so many other people in the public sector. Austerity won't be over while we have DWP workers who are reliant on the very benefits that they're administrating, outside of the civil service where nurses are reliant on food banks. Things are only going to get better for people when they've got money in their pockets and they're able to survive. So that's why I'm asking, pay restoration.
Now we are going to listen to Stand Up to Racism.
My name's Marcus and I represent Stand Up to Racism Greater Manchester. On the 28th of March, 500,000 people marched through London and said we are tired of the far right and we are tired of racism in the UK. That is how you combat the threat of a far right government. You do not combat the threat of a far right government by competing with them to be more racist. Andy, when you back the racist policies proposed by Shabana Mahmood to reform the immigration system, you are conceding ground to the far right. You are giving them the opportunity to set the narrative that migrants are a drain on society. They are not. Migrant workers like myself are the backbone of this society. We make this society richer, not just culturally with our food, but physically and financially with the taxes that we pay. We do not claim benefits disproportionately. That is a lie propagated by the far right. When you give in to these lies, when you give in to this racism, you're rolling out the red carpet to racists like Reform UK. The way to combat racism is to fight it, is to resist it, in the streets, in the council, and in the House of Commons. Thank you.
The next speaker is from CHARM, Community for Holistic, Accessible, Rights-Based Mental Health.
All right, Andy, you okay? You must be a bit tired after having your ear bent all this time. Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? Anyway, Andy, before you walk through that door and on to number 10, do you remember us? We're CHARM. We are the grassroots campaign that you met calling for a new mental health system rooted in neighbourhoods, relationships and community, not in exclusion, crisis management and closed doors. We met with you because people living with serious mental illnesses are dying 10 to 15 years earlier than everyone else. In Manchester, the premature death rate has been reported as the highest in the country, more than double the national average. In Manchester, the death rate was behind these figures are sons, daughters, parents, partners and friends. And do you know what? Money intended for secondary mental health care was redirected elsewhere, and an already troubled system was pushed further into crisis. Vulnerable people were abandoned and people died. This cannot continue. You listened when families and service users spoke about neglect, abusive treatment and not being heard. You understood this is also about poverty, housing, physical health and social care. We still ask, why are premature deaths not the defining measure of whether the system is working? Mental health services need the same principles behind the municipal law. We need truth, we need candour, we need disclosure, and we need accountability. And to be honest, we're not getting those from the NHS Trust in the city. Families deserve openness, whistleblowers need protection, institutions must be judged by what they learn, not what they hide. So take this demand with you, Andy. Build a properly funded neighbourhood mental health care and social care support system that keeps people alive, supports purposeful lives, listens to families, values workers and tells the truth. Because if mortality is not the system's priority, we have made it ours, and we really hope you will make it yours.
And now we are going to listen from Climate Justice Coalition.
Thanks, Andy. I'm Linda from Greater Manchester Climate Justice Coalition. In the first month of the war on Iran, the major oil companies were raking in profits of $30 million an hour. They were expected to make over $230 billion in excess profits by the end of this year. And it's ordinary people who pay for this, with high energy bills and a soaring cost of living crisis. It's obscene that these companies should make such huge profits out of war and global chaos. Rising global temperatures, driven by fossil fuel pollution, are on track to cause over £1 trillion of damage to the UK's economy over the next decade. Just think about that, Andy. Ignore the lobbying from the oil and gas companies and increase windfall taxes to 70% of excess profits. That would just bring us up to the global average. And not just windfall taxes, you need to close the tax loopholes which let polluters avoid responsibility and impose regular higher taxes on oil and gas companies. And do you know that the richest 1% of humanity cause as much carbon pollution as the poorest 5 billion people on the planet? Wealth taxes would reduce the enormous harm to the planet which the super rich are causing. Their private jets need to be banned, but you could start by taxing aviation fuel and introducing a frequent flyer levy. You need to ensure that funds reach the communities struggling with the cost of living and those hit hardest by floods, wildfires and extreme weather. And you need to fund a just transition to a fairer, greener economy that works for everyone. And finally, the UK must support the negotiations at the UN for a tax convention which would ensure that the world's richest and most polluting companies and individuals pay their fair share of taxes, and developing countries receive the climate finance they need. For social, economic and climate justice, you must make polluters pay.
And finally, out of the program, we have here a representative from Restoration of the Grant.
Hi everyone, my name is Joanne Taylor and I'm a campaigner. And I'm here today to stand up for disabled tenants. We are 2 years on from the general election victory and this Labour government has failed to produce a long-term disability strategy. We say no more, and we demand the ending of the 50-50 split funding arrangement between housing associations and central government for the Disabled Facilities Grant for tenants that can be a discriminatory practice also. This split funding can cause a nightmare total adaptations gridlock. It allows housing associations to deny, restrict and delay vital home adaptations. This is not just a funding issue, it is a human rights issue. Because of flaws in the Disabled Facilities Grant, many are left trapped in unsafe conditions, greatly distressed, instead moved multiple times and treated unfavourably, when they simply want to remain in their feasible property for their adaptations, but they're forced to move out instead. We demand the restoration of the grant for tenants in these housing associations, and that these housing associations stop blocking adaptations in feasible houses. My petition has over 53,000 supporters. Please sign and share my petition on change.org under restoration of the grant. Thank you.
Well, our government, our new government, will do the best to listen to all your petitions and proceed accordingly. Thank you for coming.